To the first union in American history.
Unions are having a moment. Despite decades of declining membership and plenty of failed attempts, the last few months have seen a flurry of decisive victories, with first-ever unions forming at some of the country's biggest companies, including Amazon. In April, workers at one Staten Island warehouse officially voted in a grassroots union called the Amazon Labor Union, or ALU, making it Amazon's first union in the U.S., and Amazon is far from alone.
The first Starbucks to form a union at a company-operated store ever in America.
Now, this is the first major effort at an Apple store.
Workers continue to push back against employers in all sectors, fighting for better conditions, pay, and benefits. Now, Google employees are asking if their pay will be scaled up to match inflation.
These movements are gaining traction amid what labor experts call a perfect storm. 4 decades of stagnant wages, a pandemic that's brought record profits for companies and frustration for workers. Lots of jobs, not enough applicants, and a pro-union administration.
By the way, Amazon, here we come.
But amid the Great Resignation and labor shortage, critics say workers have power whether or not they unionize.
My message to these workers is, if you're not happy with a job, there's 11.3 million vacancies out there. Some of them are for you.
But the win at Amazon was unusual because the ALU isn't part of a big, powerful union, but a brand new one created by Amazon employee Derek Palmer and fired worker Chris Smalls.
The way we organized was completely unprecedented, non-traditional. We had to negotiate it ourselves. As workers, we know the ins and outs of the company best.
But now that Amazon has a union, it's a long, tough road to a contract before workers will see change.
The real work is definitely beginning now. We're in court as we speak. We have to get this company to come to the table for negotiation, which we know they do not want to do.
We talked with workers at the center of the movement to get an inside look at how the ALU won and ask what's next as Amazon fights back and tough negotiations loom. The win at Amazon is part of a trend not seen since the labor movement during the Great Depression, when auto and factory workers organized by the thousands and won benefits we often take for granted today, like overtime pay, the 8-hour workday, and the weekend. Sarita Gupta of the Ford Foundation co-wrote a new book about modern unions.
I think there's a lot of factors that are fueling that, the biggest being the pandemic. Like, is it worth risking my health?
In the 60s, safety in the workplace was also a major motivator for a surge of unionizing that was interwoven with the civil rights movement. When Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in 1968, he was visiting Memphis to support a strike led primarily by black sanitation workers after 2 men were fatally crushed by a defective garbage compactor on the job. They carried signs that read, "I am a man," not unlike some signs carried by Amazon workers today. Now, more than half a century later, American approval of unions is back at the highest it's been since 1965. A recent CNBC survey found 59% of U.S. workers say they support increased unionization in their own workplaces. And in the first 6 months of fiscal year 2022, the National Labor Relations Board saw a 57% increase in the number of union filings from the year before, a big surge in intent to unionize, and a 14% increase in the number of unfair labor practice charges.
There were over 100,000 workers in October alone last year of workers who are preparing to go on strike. Something has really shifted culturally.
But while support for unions is high, actual participation remains at a multi-decade low. In 2021, U.S. union membership was at 10.3%, down from 10.8% in 2020, and way down from 20% in 1983 and nearly 35% at its peak in 1954. Diana Furchtgott-Roth was chief economist for the U.S. Department of Labor during the George W. Bush administration.
Many people think, well, I don't want to be paying $100 a month to a union. And that's why union representation has steadily declined.
That steady decline is one reason it came as a shock to many when on April 1st, Staten Island workers at a factory called JFK 8 voted in favor of the Amazon Labor Union by a margin of more than 500 votes.
2654 yes to 2131 no.
So Amazon wouldn't let us inside the Staten Island warehouse where workers voted to unionize in April. Instead, they showed us this 1.3 million square foot robotic fulfillment center in Carteret, New Jersey. It's also the fulfillment center where Chris Smalls first worked.
I worked at Amazon starting back in 2015. I liked it at first. I enjoyed working with the people that I was working with at the time.
The father of three was promoted to assistant manager within a year, went to a new warehouse in Connecticut in 2017, then in 2018 transferred to Staten Island at JFK 8, where he made $25 an hour. Palmer makes $21.50 an hour.
The cost of living is going up, the gas is going up, food is going up. 30 is the minimum. We're going to fight for that, and we told workers that we're going to fight for 30 because they deserve it, working 10 hours.
At $15 an hour, Amazon's current minimum starting wage is more than double the federal minimum wage and higher than Walmart's $12 an hour minimum. Amazon's competitive benefits package includes health coverage on day one, fully paid family leave, and college tuition support.
Amazon management didn't come to that on their own, like, oh, we decided suddenly to raise wages. It took movements. It took workers in their workplaces to organize.
Back at the New Jersey warehouse we toured, a worker died this month during the annual Prime Day rush. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration is inspecting the death, although no details have been released. OSHA is also investigating working conditions at Amazon warehouses in 3 other states. Workers say they face a grueling pace of work with strict limits on how much time off task they can rack up, commonly called TOT. It's been a problem at massive warehouses where it can take several minutes to walk to bathrooms a football field away. The union is asking for more transparency around how they're tracked and disciplined for TOT.
You walk into work one day, they say, oh, we've been tracking this for however long. They put together the TOT, and then that's it. There's no say, there's no rebuttal, there's no plead my case, that's it. They walk you out the door.
Amazon says that in 2021, just 0.4% of employees were fired for their inability to perform the job. Still, leaked internal research from 2021 shows Amazon has a turnover rate of 159%, nearly triple that of the overall transportation and warehouse sectors, meaning it churns through the equivalent of all its warehouse workers more than once a year. Amazon predicted it will deplete the available labor supply in the U.S. network by 2024.
The people who voted for the union now are probably going to be out in a year or even a few months. And you'll get a group of workers who haven't voted for the union who are going to be having the dues taken out of their paychecks.
But when the pandemic hit, Smalls says change was urgent. Workers at JFK 8 got sick. One died. In March 2020, Smalls led a walkout to pressure Amazon to increase COVID safety protocols.
Reminding the CEO that you're making billions of dollars a day, meanwhile the warehouses are still suffering horrific conditions, and this is a life or death situation.
Amazon says it's invested billions of dollars to keep employees safe during the pandemic. A couple hours after the walkout, Amazon fired Smalls, saying he received multiple warnings for violating social distancing guidelines.
I expected some type of repercussion for it, but definitely didn't expect to lose my job.
A few days later, an internal memo was leaked in which Amazon's general counsel called Smalls not smart or articulate.
That moment right there motivated me to continue, especially after just being fired.
For the next year, he led protests in front of Jeff Bezos' homes. Then Smalls and his former coworker and friend Derek Palmer decided to focus on forming a union. They brought chairs to a bus stop outside JFK 8, where they camped out at all hours of the day and night to talk to workers from every shift.
We definitely slept overnight in those chairs in front of a big bonfire with a tent. We would, pass out food at nighttime all the way up until the sunrise, and then pack up and get in our cars and drive home like zombies. But it was definitely worth it.
We had to make organizing the best, environment for us mentally as well. So to play music, hand out food, books, weed, whatever it took to change the culture of the building, we did that.
The union was voted in by a majority of the 4,700 plus workers who cast a ballot, but some 3,500 workers didn't vote at all. In a statement, Amazon told CNBC, "We've always said that we want our employees to have their voices heard, and in this case, that didn't happen. Fewer than a third of the employees at the site voted for the union, and overall turnout was unusually low." Since the win, Smalls has visited the White House and stood side by side with pro-union lawmakers rallying in support of other Amazon warehouses trying to organize.
It's an extraordinary achievement. You have taken on one of the most powerful corporations in America. They spent millions of dollars trying to defeat you.
Last year, Amazon spent $4.3 million on labor consulting firms. Union votes at 2 other warehouses have failed, including one just across the street from JFK 8. The workers at this small new warehouse, called LDJ5, voted against joining the Amazon labor union in April.
LDJ5 only been around for over a year now. So, they're battling not only adjusting to the company and how the union busting was doubled down in a smaller shop. They had to learn all of this while trying to get their coworkers to vote yes. It was just not the right time.
It is one of the most difficult processes for workers to go through. I can't stress that enough. Workers actually take great risk to organize in their workplaces today.
Just because LDJ5 didn't get a victory today doesn't mean you guys aren't important to the ALU.
To understand how one Amazon warehouse unionized and another didn't, let's take a look at how unionizing works. When a group of employees decide they want to try to unionize, the first step is for them to collect their colleagues' signatures on authorization cards, which Smalls and Palmer often did at the bus stop. Once they get at least 30% of workers to sign, employees file a petition for an election with the NLRB. If the majority of employees vote for a union in the secret ballot election, it wins. But before the union is officially recognized by the NLRB, either party has 7 days to file objections to how the election took place. After the win at JFK 8, Amazon filed 25 objections, including charges that union leaders bribed workers with marijuana and harassed those who didn't support the union. 5 weeks of court hearings via Zoom concluded this week, although no ruling has been made.
It's all BS. We played by the rules and we won.
Last spring, a union vote failed at another Amazon warehouse in Bessemer, Alabama. In that case, the union filed objections against Amazon and won a re-election, but the union lost that do-over too. In a statement, Amazon told CNBC, "Our employees have the choice of whether or not to join a union. They always have. As a company, we don't think unions are the best answer for our employees. Our focus remains on working directly with our team to continue making Amazon a great place to work." Back at JFK 8, if the union vote stands after the hearings conclude, it's time for perhaps the hardest step in the process, negotiating the contract that will determine what actually changes in the workplace.
Often employers decide to really delay the process, to make it hard. And sometimes I've been involved in campaigns where a first contract process could take multiple years.
Here's what it takes to reach an impactful contract. Employees meet with union representatives to prioritize a set of issues to raise with the employer. Then a committee made up of employees and union reps presents proposals to managers at the bargaining table. Management counteroffers, and the sides begin to reach agreements on some proposals while trading counteroffers over unresolved issues. It usually takes months to reach the first contract. Unions often have initiation fees, which are usually waived for those employed during the first contract. And of course, there's dues, which are used to fund union staff and infrastructure. Companies often dissuade workers from unionizing by portraying the union as a third party hungry for dues. Palmer says his pro-union colleagues had to counter this message during mandatory captive audience meetings Amazon held leading up to the vote. Amazon told CNBC in a statement, "We hold these meetings, which have been legal for more than 70 years, with our employees because it's important that everyone understands the facts about joining a union and the election process itself."
It's better to have, workers leading the charge inside the captive audience meetings, shutting the meetings down, so to say, giving that information out to workers, building that family-oriented environment.
This grassroots approach is unusual when it comes to union wins, especially against big companies. The Amazon labor union is brand new. In Bessemer, workers were voting on whether to join the large, established retail, wholesale, and department store union, which has some 100,000 members. Last year, Smalls and Palmer drove 16 hours to Alabama to support the effort.
The RWDSU, they're an established union, but we saw a few flaws in their game plan. Now, if you don't have organizers inside the facility, it's hard to keep the morale up. It's hard to counter what Amazon is doing, with these captive audience meetings.
But there are definite downsides to a small new union, namely limited resources. As the ALU grapples with the loss at LDJ5 and battles Amazon in court for the right to negotiate, bigger unions have stepped up to offer legal support, donations, and temporary office space.
The key ingredient seems like it's the organizing at the very heart of knowing the workers in your warehouse. How do you scale that to other warehouses?
Every warehouse has a different culture, but the same issues. What we did in Staten Island, it can't be duplicated.
The unlikely victory of the grassroots effort at Amazon happened at the same time workers were voting to form small unions at other huge companies, including Google, REI, Starbucks, and Apple. In June, just a couple months after the ALU victory, Apple retail workers voted in the company's first ever U.S. union at a store in Towson, Maryland.
So it definitely is a little empowering knowing that this is revolutionary. Again, like we're making the change that, other people have tried to do, but just haven't been successful in doing. We talk about the Starbucks and we talk about Amazon and we support them and would love to see more companies and more people stand up for themselves 100%.
Apple and Amazon only have one location unionized for now, but at Starbucks, the movement has spread rapidly. Since the first store unionized in Buffalo, New York, just 7 months ago, more than 100 Starbucks across 30 states have unionized, including this one in Manhattan, where we met barista Laura Garza.
None of us make a livable wage. There are many partners at my store that have 2 to 3 jobs.
Garza's been with Starbucks for 22 years and helped organize her store, which won its vote the same day as the Amazon labor union.
It was exciting to see the number of stores wanting to unionize and just seeing this momentum of unionization happen not just on the East Coast, but across the country.
I've just visited 3 Starbucks that are unionizing in Cleveland a few days ago.
Garza and Smalls exchanged union pins recently when they were both invited to the White House to discuss their union efforts with Vice President Harris.
They heard some of our stories of fierce anti-union busting, not only from Starbucks, but from Amazon.
Starbucks, meanwhile, denies any claims of anti-union activity. So why does a giant like Amazon, or Starbucks, or Apple bother with the public, expensive fight against these small groups of workers unionizing?
At the end of the day, it's business and it all comes down to money.
Workers in unions make on average 17% or nearly $200 more per week than non-union workers. While Amazon wages are good compared to other warehouse jobs, workers say it's not enough coming from one of the world's most valuable companies. And over the 4 decades that union membership has declined, wages have stagnated, and there's been a rise in income inequality.
Companies, especially coming out of the pandemic, are profiting at huge levels, yet workers are still not getting a slice of those profits. And it makes people realize that collective action, collective power is needed to really change the game.
Back at the New Jersey warehouse where Amazon allowed us inside, we spoke with one worker who loves her job at Amazon.
They take care of you very well, they be on top of you with your safety.
But when asked how she would vote if her warehouse organized a union?
Yes. Why not?
She currently makes $19 an hour. Is that enough to live here comfortably?
To live here comfortably, no. Being honest, no, because especially now that everything have raised up.
If more workers like Felice joined unions, some experts say it could help improve wage stagnation in the U.S.
It's gonna make a long-lasting effect for not just JFK, but when we decide to unionize other facilities, motivating them too.
What are some of the other warehouses that you're talking to?
The entire country. Every day that list grows. People reach out to us every day from different facilities, ever since April 1st.
Though isolated to a single warehouse for now, Smalls and Palmer are committed to seeing long-term economic impacts from the Amazon labor union that won its first election just a year after it was founded.
One thing I know, we made history, and that's great to experience that with the world, but we know we're a long way from our end road, and we want to make sure that what we're doing here is lasting forever, not just a moment.